Hi, I'm Christine Benz from Morningstar.com. Many Americans are hurtling toward retirement without enough savings. Joining me to discuss some prescriptions for the impending retirement crisis is Charley Ellis. He's an investment expert and an author. Charley, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the invitation.
Your new book, your latest book, Falling Short, is about the retirement crisis, not just the impending retirement crisis, but arguably the one that we're in right now. And you offer some, I think, really great prescriptions for solving that crisis. Let's talk first, though, about why you think kind of an incremental approach makes sense rather than one that would be what you call a big bang approach where we completely upend the system and start over.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to change one word when you said solve the problem. How about manage the problem? Bring it under control. Because solving is a little bit too ambitious for me.
So some ideas for bringing the problem under control. But let's talk about why you think we don't need to completely upend the system or why we shouldn't have that as a goal.
Well, I start with just being realistic. You don't have to read the newspapers too carefully to realize there's a lot of we're not going to get action on this and we're not going to get action on that in Congress. So instead of let's get action on a really complicated, politically difficult, very challenging, analytical, why don't we just say we're going to accept things the way they are on the big main structures, and we're going to make some modifications that would be easy to make, but would do an enormous amount of good in the long run.
So you tackle the problem from a variety of different angles in the book. You look at Social Security, you look at the role of home equity for some retirees, but let's focus specifically on retirement plans, specifically 401ks, which are a real thrust for the book. Let's talk about some of the features, the so-called nudge features, why you think they're so valuable, but why you think we could push them even perhaps a little bit further.
Well, I think all of us ought to vote for Richard Thaler getting the next Nobel Prize because he's done us all so much good by saying, people do behave not quite rationally, but predictably. And if you pay attention, you can see how people do again and again certain kinds of things. So let's respond to that. And in a very, very nice way, he said, you can set things up in a way that makes it easier for people to do the right thing. For an example, instead of having cigarettes out and available for anybody at the checkout counter, put them somewhere you have to go out of your way to get cigarettes. Or if you want to make it really easy for people to do something, set it up for them. So the good food for you is easy access. The not so good for you is a little bit harder access. It just encourages you to do, quote unquote, the right thing. And the same applies, and he's done a wonderful job of making that clear in 401k investing. So if you said to people, you're going to be in the plan unless you'd rather not, so that people are free to make a decision if they really want to. But most people don't know very much about investing because most people don't have any experience with investing, and it makes sense that they wouldn't be comfortable answering difficult, complicated questions like, how much do you want to set aside? How much do you want to save each year? How do you want it invested? But you could turn it around the other way and say, okay, the company who's sponsoring has people who know a lot. It's been their career, they've spent a long number of years working at it, they've probably studied it, they've read books about it, and they've got access to all kinds of experts who can help them. So let the company's experts set up what I'd call a blue plate special. Good for you, it'll work out fine for almost everybody, but if it isn't quite right for you for some reason or another, you're free to say, no thank you, I'd rather not have that. So starts with you're in the plan automatically, and unless you say, no, I really don't want to be in the plan. So then you don't have to be in the plan, you opt out. And the way it is today, you have to say, yes, I want to be in the plan, and you opt in. It's a little bit more difficult decision, so fewer people make the decision to be in the plan when it's an opt-in than would make the same decision to be in the plan if it's an opt-out. They have the same freedom, but the outcome is a little bit better for them. The same thing in terms of matching the company's contribution. If you say to somebody, you would like to match the match, it's 4% or 5% or 6% that the company sets up, whatever the company has set, and it doubles your money immediately. Mm-hmm. Surely you would like to do that. Well, you could argue, some people say, well, yeah, but I've got a lot of expenses at home. I really don't think I can do that. Maybe I'll do that next year or maybe the year after, and they lock themselves into a never, 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 never. So you say automatically, you're going to be in the plan, and you'll be into enough to match the match and get that free money. And if you say, no, I don't want it, I've thought about it carefully, I don't want it, you opt out, fine. But you increase enormously the number of people who will get the benefit of that match. The same thing with what's called auto-escalation. Every time you get a raise, either 1/4 or 1/3 or whatever is the number that works for the company's experience, goes into savings, which you can spend later in your retirement years and build up enough savings so you can have a secure retirement. You could always say, no, I don't want that. My rich uncle died and I'm a very wealthy person, so I don't want to do that. Fine. But if you're just a normal American person working for a living, you probably ought to have it and it would work out fine.
So another thing that you discuss in the book is some of the default contribution rates in use currently. You and a lot of other investment experts argue that they're too low in many cases, with 3% being kind of the standard. You think that they should start a little higher. I guess the risk is, though, do the participants start to feel a little bit of pain at, say, 6% when that much of their paycheck is going?
Where it's been tried, it's worked very comfortably, and there's no sense of distress. So it's hypothetical that it would be somehow distressing.
So you'd favor
yeah, go ahead.
higher default contribution rates make a lot of sense.
To the people who've experienced it, it makes a lot of sense. And anybody standing back and looking at it as an economist or a social scientist would say, yes, it makes a lot of sense, because later on in your life, you will need that money.
Let's discuss investment options within the 401k confines. You are on the board of directors for Vanguard funds.
I'm no longer. I've aged out.
So you were on the board of directors for Vanguard funds. Let's talk about the role of low-cost products, why you think they're so important within the confines of 401k plans.
If you study investment results over a long period of time, across a large number of investment managers and across a large number of individual investors and institutional investors, you find over and over and over and over again, the main secret to success is low fees. And
so index funds, you think, should have a prominent role and should be the basis for target date funds.
Well, low fees should be the prominent role, and low fees can be obtained in actively managed. Not as easy by any stretch,
right,
and not as low by any stretch as you would get with indexing. And I just, for what it's worth, in my family, my wife and I index, my 2 sons index, and their 4 children, small amounts, index.
So you're true believers.
So, yeah,
Let's discuss so-called leakage from 401k plans. This is another topic that you talk about in the book. What do you think is the prescription there? Because we do see money passing out of company retirement plans, leaving altogether the retirement savings confines. How do you solve for that issue or attempt to address that issue?
I'm going to take a little bit of time because I think it's fun to get back into history a little bit. My first job was working for the Rockefeller family. And John D. Rockefeller was a very serious-minded Baptist who believed deeply in savings or thrift. And his children growing up all had to save money every month, and they had to report that they had saved. And he believed it so deeply that he wanted to have that for the people working for the Standard, as he called the company. And so he developed, in addition to a pension, people working for the Standard could put some extra money aside in what was called a thrift plan. And he wanted to make it easy for people to do that. So he encouraged them by saying, first, I will match you, whatever you put aside up to a certain amount. That was pretty good encouragement. Secondly, if you ever need the money back, you can take it back. He didn't want to have people afraid that they would lock their money away and just couldn't touch it when they really needed it. And third, I will let you invest in the company, in the Standard, so you'll know when you're working for the company, working for yourself. As a concept, that really made great sense, and it was very successful. Same thing with AT&T, who looked over their shoulder and said, it's working for the Standard, we should do it too. 401ks got their legitimacy in part by getting AT&T and the Standard Oil companies to come together in convert their thrift plans into 401k plans. So people say, well, if the best companies in the world are doing it, it must be fine for us. And that was the beginnings of the acceptance of 401k. And then people made it a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier to have access to those funds just in case you ever needed it. And I think we've gone too far. And I think it's a shame that today you can say, here are my purposes. I want to make an addition on my home, or I want to remodel my kitchen. Fine. You can take money out. I want to pay for my children's education. Well, there, I would think that was a good reason, but put it in. If you have too much in credit card debt, you can pay off your credit cards by saying, I'm going to take money out and so on. That's part of the problem. The second part of the problem used to be that people work for a company for their careers, or the company for their careers. Now many people work for 5, 6, or 7 companies over a series of different times. And the space or the time between working for company A and company B, some young people are financing that interim period, having a wonderful time, going on vacation, doing things they've always kind of wanted to do, but they're spending the money that was set aside by them for their retirement. And when they get to be 75, 80, 85, or 90, that money is not going to be available. And that worries me. And so, yes, it's a little bit of paternalism, and yes, it's a little bit of mother knows best, but I think it makes a lot of sense to make it a little bit harder here, there, and another place to take money out. Really good reason? Fine. Not so good reason? Better to work towards the long term.
You made the point in the book, actually, that it's kind of perverse that we penalize people who do have true hardships, such as a medical need or something like that, and need to tap their 401k, that maybe they shouldn't face a penalty. But you think that for more mainstream expenditures, there should be tighter limits.
Yeah. The idea of slapping people really on the hand when they've got a terrible financial crisis and there is a solution, and then we say, yes, but we're going to hurt you on the way out. That's not America. That was a mistake, and we ought to correct that mistake. The penalty was to keep people from using it to do the less important things. And it's not working. Nobody pays attention to it, or almost nobody pays attention to it. So why don't we admit that's not working and set up a different set of limits on what you can do, but not hit people on the way out. And Senator Warren did a very nice study when she was in law school on bankruptcies, and it turns out half the people who go bankrupt because of medical expenses that just overwhelm them financially. Well, to avoid bankruptcy might be a darn good reason for being able to tap your 401k.
Okay, Charlie, such an important topic, such a valuable book with a lot of, I think, terrific insights. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Pleasure, a real pleasure.
Thanks for watching. I'm Christine Benz from Morningstar.com.